Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a really unique and fascinating educational approach. We're going to explore how a Pakistani ninth grade biology textbook explicitly links foundational biological concepts with classical historical texts. Instead of just dry facts, it blends philosophical and religious writings with scientific observation to really spark a student's curiosity. It's a fantastic way to frame the study of life. Now, what's really interesting here is where the textbook actually begins the lesson. It opens with a very direct prompt for the student, asking them to describe Quranic instructions to reveal the study of life, or to explain the concept about the origin of life. This isn't just some casual introduction, right? It's the foundational question of the whole chapter. It sets the scene for a highly structured exploration, signaling to the student that they're going to look at biology through the lens of these specific classical guidelines. It really encourages the student to actively reflect by combining two completely different worlds of knowledge. To answer that big opening question, our roadmap for today is broken down into 4 distinct pillars: origin in water, human origins, stages of development, and finally, animal diversity. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Origin in Water. To introduce this core biological concept, the textbook presents a specific classical quote. It reads, "We made every living thing from water," citing Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 30. By putting this verse front and center, the textbook establishes a philosophical and historical starting point. It's using this text to plant a seed in the student's mind, the idea that water and life are inextricably, fundamentally linked together. And this is where it brilliantly bridges that classical text with empirical biology. Immediately following that quote, the text hits us with a vital scientific fact. The average water content in different organisms ranges between 60% to 90%. This provides the physical evidence that backs up the historical quote. You're learning that, hey, whether it's a plant, an insect, or a human being sitting at a desk, the vast majority of our physical makeup is quite literally just water. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is the conclusion the textbook draws from combining these two pieces of information. It states that the verse, fully supported by that 60 to 90% statistic, hints at the common origin of all living things in water. It's a beautifully structured way to teach. You have the historical prompt, the biological data, and then the resulting scientific theory of a shared aquatic origin for every living thing on Earth. Moving smoothly along, we hit Section 2, Human Origins. Again, the teaching method here is super consistent. The text introduces the topic with another quote, this time from Surah Al-Rahman. Verse 14, "He made man from clay like the potter." This brings in the concept of human creation from earth and elements. It paints a highly visual, almost metaphorical picture of human beings being shaped and formed from the very earth we stand on.
Now, what's incredibly fascinating about the textbook's approach here is what it asks the student to do next. It doesn't just present the quote and move on. No, it explicitly states, we are advised to think over the possible ways through which such events might have occurred. It's actively using these classical hints to encourage students to investigate. It's a direct invitation to scientific inquiry. The textbook is essentially telling the student, okay, here is the historical concept. Now use your scientific mind to think about the actual biological events and mechanisms that could make this possible. It's turning a passive reader into an active researcher.
Let's transition over to Section 3, Stages of Development. Looking at point number 3, titled Method of Development, notice how the text sets this up. It states that classical texts also hint at the method of development of animals, including human beings. It's preparing the student for a breakdown of a highly sequential biological process. So we're zooming way in, moving from the broad concept of creation into the intricate, microscopic stages of embryonic growth. To map out this entire process, the text quotes Surah Al-Mamun, verse 14. "Then fashioned we the drop a clot, then fashioned we the clot a little lump, then fashioned we the little lump bones, then clothed the bones with flesh." Impartially speaking, what the textbook is highlighting here is how this classical text outlines a highly specific sequence of embryonic development. It's presenting a strict chronological order of biological events happening within the womb. Think of it like a teacher mapping it out clearly on a whiteboard for an attentive student. The textbook takes that quote and breaks biological development down into 4 distinct chronological phases. Step 1, the initial drop transforming into a clot. Step 2, that clot developing into a little lump of tissue. Step 3, that little lump forming a skeletal structure, or bones. And finally, Step 4,
those bones being clothed with flesh or muscle tissue. By breaking it down step by step like this, the textbook makes a really complex biological sequence memorable and super easy to grasp for the focused learner. And that brings us to our final section, animal diversity. The textbook introduces this broader topic with a quote from Surah Al-Nur, verse 45. Allah has created every animal from water. Then some of them creep up over their bellies, others walk on 2 legs, and others on 4. Honestly, this is a brilliant summation of the whole chapter's themes. It reiterates that common origin in water we talked about earlier, but then it introduces the concept of physical modification. It observes that despite having a shared beginning, life has branched out into wildly different forms with entirely different ways of moving through the world. And here is exactly how the textbook applies its direct biological interpretation to that text. It explicitly explains that early life began in water, specifically noting fishes, and that over time, animals with limbs evolved. It connects the classical verse directly to the evolutionary biology concept of aquatic creatures eventually developing the physical traits necessary to transition to life on land. To make all of this easy to digest, the textbook categorizes these evolutionary modifications based exactly on the locomotion described in the classical text. We have 3 distinct groups here. Animals that creep over their bellies, like reptiles or amphibians, animals that walk on 2 legs, like birds or humans, and animals that walk on 4 legs, comprising a huge chunk of the mammalian world. It's a neat, highly structured way of viewing the vast diversity of the animal kingdom through the lens of evolutionary modification and physical adaptation. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question based on what we've seen today. How do educational texts use historical and philosophical writings to inspire the ongoing study of biology? We've seen firsthand how this textbook doesn't just list dry facts. It uses cultural and classical touchstones to spark curiosity, actively encouraging students to think over the possible scientific ways our complex world came to be. It shows us that the pursuit of science and the study of life can be inspired by so many diverse sources. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this structured journey leaves you eager to keep exploring the world around you.